based in London. And we're all here today to reiterate Al Jazeera's demand for the immediate release of all of our colleagues who are detained in Egypt. It's exactly a month now since the Al Jazeera English team were put in prison just for doing their job, trying to tell all sides of the story. So that team, as you know, Mohamed Fahmy, who's the producer, Peter Grester, the correspondent, and Baha Mohammed, also a producer. But also to remember our colleagues, Mohamed Badr, who's a cameraman for Al Jazeera Mubashir Misa. He's been locked up since July. And Al Jazeera Arabic's Abdullah Shami, who's a reporter, has been held without charge since August 2013. Now, Egypt clearly has become a very difficult place to operate for all journalists. And just to point you in the direction of our website, we've got a timeline on there showing some of the difficulties that Al Jazeera colleagues have had there. They've been beaten and detained and shot at whilst trying to report from there. We've had an awful lot of international media support for the release of our colleagues, and we're very grateful for that. And just to draw your attention to the press pack, all the details that you need for our colleagues are in there, but also a letter from prison from Peter Grester, which is very much worth reading. Let me introduce our speakers today. On my right here, Heather Allen, who's the AJE Head of News Gathering. She's been in Egypt just recently, and she'll tell you all about the efforts that Al Jazeera is making to try and get her colleagues released, and also the concern for their welfare, because obviously the conditions they're being held in. We have here Peter Oborne, who's a senior political commentator for the Daily Telegraph. He's recently come back from Egypt, as you probably will have read and experienced how hard it is for journalists to operate there. Just here on my left, we've got Fred Scott, who's a personal friend, I think I'm right in saying, of Peter Grester. They worked together, first met I think in Kabul in 1995, and were part of an award-winning team which produced a documentary about Somalia, so he knows Peter well. And we've got Sam Kiley here from Sky News, who's the Foreign Affairs editor. Thank you very much also for coming. And Jonathan Baker, who was until recently head of news gathering at BBC, also was a Foreign Affairs editor, foreign editor at the BBC, and knows Peter Grester well from that time, and is currently going to be head of the Journalism College at the BBC. And last but not least, on Skype, we have the parents of Peter Grester, Lois and Eurus Grester. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us there from Brisbane. And I'd like to start with you, if I could. So we're going to hear from all our team, our panel here, and after that, obviously, take your questions. But over to you, Eurus and Lois. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So tell us, have you had any latest news of Peter, and what have you been hearing?
Go on.
Well, I guess the latest news, if you can call it news, is that we're rather on the edge of our seats, because we understand that Peter's case is being reviewed at the moment. That's the case that was lodged as an appeal.
And can you say again what it is that you're feeling about, his condition in prison and what it's like for him there? Can you tell us a bit about what you know?
Well, Heather, we were quite horrified. It is no secret that Lois caved in, gave way when we read the letters. But we have had to accept some of the side conditions that he's in. But I dare say what upsets us most is knowing what an outdoors person Peter is. He loves his beaches, loves his kite surfing, he loves bushwalking, and he rides a motorbike to get around. And we know that being cooped up anywhere for more than 24 hours, for more than 24 hours is hell for him.
Lois, I don't know if you can bear to talk about it, but...
Yes, I can, Lauren. I'm sorry, I've just been a bit quiet, but letting Eurus do most of the talking tonight.
That seems reasonable. And you've had to experience him being away in some very dangerous places over the years. Presumably you didn't ever expect that he'd just be put in prison just for kind of doing his day-to-day job?
Oh, absolutely not. Yes, he has been in lots of dangerous places, in Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as the well-known Somalia place, what happened in Somalia, in the Sudan, in Congo. All of these places are places that are very difficult situations to work in.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, and obviously we'll bring you in throughout this news conference. And if I can have Heather Allen say a few words.
Firstly, thank you all for coming. I know most of you have been in situations where you are always worried about where your staff end up, your crews end up either in jail or kidnapped, or worse still, killed. And it's always a foreign editor's worst nightmare when that happens to any of your people. It's really the sort of thing that you just pray never happens on your watch. And if it does,
hello.
Can you hear? Lois?
Hello.
No. When it does happen on your watch, you're always grateful when the international press community comes together to give you a hand. I have spent the last 3.5 weeks going backwards and forwards to Cairo. As you know, Jazeera is not the flavor du jour there at the moment, but we've had no trouble getting in and out. We've had no trouble seeing the lawyers. We've had no trouble seeing the embassy. We've had no trouble sort of going to court. We're not allowed into the prosecutor's court, but we've been there every
We've
day.
lost sound.
Okay, I think it might just be that have I got the only microphone here that links up to them. So I think part of the problem is that there's only one microphone that links up to you on the Skype. Okay. Right. Okay. Sorry, Lois and Eurus. I think we may just have a technical problem, so we may just need to ask you to stay there if you can, and we'll try and bring you back in as soon as we can.
Yes.
It's been a bit like shadow boxing there because there have been no charges filed, and each extension on each 15 days, you know, we go to court probably 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes it's all 3, sometimes it's a combination of 2, sometimes it's 1, sometimes nobody shows up at all. The questioning has been you've read the tone of the questioning, the questions that they're being asked about being a terror cell, being Muslim Brotherhood supporters, and on and on and on. And we absolutely refute it. It's just not true. And we just keep on that line. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. We were doing nothing more than our jobs there that any one of you or our colleagues would be doing in Egypt at the moment. But it's very difficult if you don't have a charge that you can get stuck into. And they're on their third set of 15 days, and as you know, after that it goes into 45 days, and 45 days can go up to 2 years, which is what our AJA colleagues are facing. I mean, they're well into the 45-day cycle without any redress at all. They haven't been charged with anything. They're just sitting, and in their case, they're in Scorpion, which is just an awful prison. And that's where Fahmy and Baher are. Peter is in another cell block. You know, Tora is an enormous prison with many prisons inside it. The Australian embassy has been incredibly helpful, as Lois and Eurus will tell you. They have been able to get in to see Peter. He doesn't have family there, so it's been a great lifeline for him, for them to go in and see him, because they'll only allow family, lawyers, and embassy to go in and visit in Tora. We tried. My colleague Tamara Brolo, who is our head of safety, she gave it the old school try last Sunday and got right up to the door, basically, when they threw her out to try and see Peter. We know from Baher and Fahmy's families, because their families are there, the fiancé or wife, they're allowed in every 2 weeks to see them. We, of course, continue to support them in any which way we can, and there are ways that you can get in. We managed to get food in, toiletries. We've been able to get them blankets. There's nothing there. They don't give them even anything to sleep on. It's the floor, basically. You can get things in. We have been able to get things in. They've been taken away, just randomly taken away. So it's really a cat and mouse. It's a cat and mouse game we play every day that we're there.
Okay. Heather, thank you very much indeed. Peter Oborne?
I just wanted to come here really to say how much I and the Telegraph and all media organisations, all newspapers support this campaign to get the 5 Al Jazeera journalists out of that jail where they should not be. They were just doing their job. Just to say that as that very few of us go to work every day, as all journalists do in Egypt who are trying to do their job, risking ending up in jail that night and then ending up in jail possibly for a very long time. And we're just here to give that support, and of course also to remember all the other journalists in Egypt. I think there have been 40 plus who've been detained. How many are still in detention?
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, there are 40 plus journalists in Egypt under detention. They're just, we're here to remember them, we're here to support them, we're here to say to the Egyptian government that we're never going to forget they're there. We're always going to be campaigning to get them out, and it's outrageous that in a great country like Egypt with such a tradition, Egypt isn't a tin pot state or anything, it's a great nation, and for a great nation like Egypt to treat people who are doing their job as journalists, which is an ethical, a decent job, which all decent societies need, for Egypt, of all countries, to treat journalists in this way is a shame on that nation, and it will be a blot on General Field Marshal Sisi if he wants to run as president in the eyes of the world, to see that the journalists are in jail, and that is unacceptable. And so I'm just here to express my solidarity, express the solidarity of the Daily Telegraph with the Al Jazeera journalists and all the journalists who are currently in jail in Egypt.
Your microphone, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peter Oborne, thank you very much indeed for that a very passionate plea for all the detained journalists in Egypt. Fred Scott, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words.
Sure. I mean, just as a friend of Peter's, I've worked with Peter in a lot of very difficult places in the world over many years, and any of you who know Peter would recognize that any excuse not to wear shoes or long trousers is one of the first things you tend to notice about him. But there's a real toughness and seriousness beneath that, a real resilience, and I've seen him cope with unbelievable levels of stress with great style and presence of mind and focus, and I'm sure he's dealing with this situation, in that same tough, steely fashion, and our hopes and prayers are going out to Peter, his colleagues, and to his family.
Thank you very much. Sam Kiley, can I ask you to say a few words?
Well, yes. I mean, I think that my appeal would be to the Egyptian state and the state apparatus that has become an apparatus that is focusing very much on denying debate and freedom of speech in a country that ought to be the leading the Middle East and the Arab world culturally and politically and historically has done so. We all recall the tragic killing of Mick Dean, the Sky cameraman, during the massacre of opponents of the military government in Egypt last July. Now, Mick was a friend and colleague and a much respected journalist, again, literally just doing his job. And mercifully, Peter and his team have not been subject to that level of violence. But the question is, where does Egypt want to be in the community of nations? Does it want to slide back to a nation that is beyond the pale? Or does it want to remain part of the community of nations, and in particular an important part of the future dispensation in the Middle East? And I think that that is something that Field Marshal Sisi and his government, although he's not formally in power, he most certainly is the power in the government, need to reflect upon, not least because they are still considered vital strategic partners to the West.
Okay, Simon Cowley, thank you very much indeed. And Jonathan Baker from the BBC.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very pleased to associate myself and the BBC with the things that are being said here this morning, the message that's going out. Obviously, in spite of our great competitiveness, there are some issues on which we make common cause, and the safety of journalists and defending their ability to do their jobs properly, I think, must rank pretty high among them. Hearing Heather speak reminded me very forcefully of the situation we were in a few years ago when one of our correspondents was in captivity in Gaza, and I well remember that sense, that kind of, you enter this kind of nightmarish world of anxiety and uncertainty, and a tremendous sense of powerlessness as well. You can't, you want to do things, but you can't influence events. So I feel very sympathetic about that. I haven't seen much of Peter since he left us, but I knew him well during his time at the BBC. He's not a person who shies away from trouble spots. He's been based in Kabul, in Baghdad, in Mexico, and been on assignment with Fred in Somalia and other difficult places. And as Freddie said, he always behaves in a calm and thoughtful and very resilient way. He keeps a very cool head under pressure. So in spite of the fact that he clearly will be missing the open spaces, I think that he will be handling himself pretty well. And I think you can see from the letter he sent out that the professional journalist in him is still operating at full throttle, even while he's undergoing this ordeal. So I hope he is handling himself well. But the fact remains, of course, that he shouldn't be there in the first place, and neither should his colleagues. So we hope very much that we get the same happy endings we had eventually in Gaza a few years back, and that we are happy to offer our support and do anything we can to bring about that outcome.
Thank you very much indeed, and thanks to all our speakers here. And if there are any questions, if you could say who you are and then ask a question, that would be great. Thank you. I think, Peter, you've lost your microphone again. Or are you having to... Are you dash? Okay, no, fair enough. That's, well, Peter O'Moore, thanks very much indeed. Okay.
Get your umbrella.
My umbrella's very
You're going to need that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to come in?
Shall I move up for the sake of...
That's great. So, yeah.
Hi there, Roger Merchant down the BBC News. This is a question for Peter Greste's parents joining us on Skype. Mr. and Mrs. Greste, obviously a lot has been going on behind the scenes in the past month to get your son and his colleagues released. But what are your concerns now about going public with this? Are you worried it might harm his case or help his case?
Are you referring to the letters?
Yeah, and also this event as well, coming out in such a high-profile way with the news organisations.
Well, I don't really think the publicity that this has received is going to harm his profile. But we were very concerned about the letters, although we did as he wanted to. We could see the risk that is involved in that. I'm assured that the risk is not that great. Maybe he might have lost his paper and pen, but yeah.
Well, if I may jump in here and say, I have to confess that personally I was quite terrified, but at the same time exceedingly proud of what he had done. However, after those extreme emotions, we realized that we had to stand behind Peter, because we have always supported all members of our family, all children, and we knew, knowing Peter and his character, in other ways, we weren't surprised that he had taken this step, because someone of his integrity and level of conviction, yes, he would take those sorts of steps.
Thank you. Can I have one more question here?
Yeah, Colin Freeman from the
Daily Telegraph. Another question for Peter's parents. You said you were on tenterhooks because the appeal has been lodged. Can you tell us when you might hear some news and how hopeful you are that the news might go your way?
Maybe I'll take a run at this.
Well,
Lois,
thank you, Heather.
right now we're in court as we speak. 9:30G. We were in the appeals court. Our legal team was there. Our correspondent from Cairo, Rauya Raghi, was there. Our translators. The embassy, Peter hasn't shown up yet. But in my time there, Egyptian justice time runs about 5 hours late. So we're hoping to hear something today. As soon as we do, I've got every electronic device known to mankind in my handbag that will go off if we get a favourable decision today.
And when you say a favourable decision, you mean
we hope
might
that
be released?
Correct.
Yeah.
That the chart. Well, that yes, yeah.
Okay, can I take a question here from...
My name's Jonathan Miller from Channel 4 News. I've got a question for Heather. I heard what you say about Al Jazeera not being flavour of the day exactly, flavour du jour, as you put it. But look, I want to ask this sensitively because we're all mindful of the plight of these journalists and obviously want them out. But isn't the problem at the heart of this the fact that in the perception of the Egyptian government, Qatar is siding with the Brotherhood, and Al Jazeera is perceived by them, rightly or wrongly, to be a propaganda wing of the Qatari government. Has that made things more difficult for you in securing the release of these journalists?
Quite honestly, no, it hasn't. You know, I'm not here to speak for the state of Qatar, but I can say that we have operated in Egypt now. I mean, Al Jazeera Arabic has been in Egypt for 15 years. They're the most popular Arab channel by far across MENA, across Middle East and North Africa. We have operated there for 7 years. In that time, gosh, there's been, we're going into like the third incarnation now of government. We have covered it all. Arabic has covered it all. I believe we've done a very good and unbiased job of it. And honestly, yes, there are those perceptions, and we can't take it on. We can't take that on, and we don't take it on. We really just don't take it on. As a company, we don't take it on. Certainly as a division, English and Arabic don't take it on. And our journalists just go out there every day, meeting their deadlines like journalists do. There is a huge viewership of Arabic. We as a company have a very strong set of ethics that we work to, which are very similar to all of yours, journalist ethics. And I like to think we stick to it. And there is, of course, a history of press in the Middle East not being particularly free at all. Whether you agree with Jazeera or you don't, it is a different set of journalists doing all sorts of reporting from all sorts of angles, and you mightn't like it, you might like it. But I think we pretty much stick to our editorial principles. And the state of Qatar, you'd have to ask the state of Qatar, honestly.
Okay. Can I just one
In here for a moment, Heather.
Sorry, yes, dear.
Yes.
Dare I say, it's his parents speaking, but Peter's had quite a few years of background of journalism internationally, and we know that he would not have joined an organization that even threatened his personal integrity and personal high standards of journalism. So we've never had any doubts that Peter is doing what he's committed to doing and not participating in stilting stories in any direction whatsoever.
Thank you very much for that. And just a question here. Sorry, yeah.
From CNN. A question for you, Heather. Is it just because it's been a month since these gentlemen have been detained that you're having this publicity, or are you getting engaged from the lawyers that charges are imminent or that the situation is going to worsen?
Actually, we've had a campaign, if you like, going, I think, from the get-go. Lois and Eurus have been very active in Australia. So the Australian, they had a huge press conference, a week ago, I think, in Brisbane at the ABC. So the Australian press has been running with this really since then, I think, haven't they? It's been a very, very, very concentrated campaign in Australia, obviously. And what we're trying to do is just keep up the pressure. I mean, can I keep our powder dry for another day? So we are just keeping up the pressure at various events. The next one will probably be in New York. We're trying for Toronto, and we're just going to keep on plugging away at this. It's not just a one-day event. So if we figure if every week we have a big meeting of journalists and editors and press, NGOs, it's going to help because this is a marathon. You know, if we're lucky today with Peter, we've got another 4 to go, and as you said, there's about 40 in there. It's just a constant drip in Egypt. We've got to keep on remembering that there's other people, other journalists that are in jail there, and with no charges, no charges.
Yes.
I noticed you singled out the Australian episode of praise, but not the Canadian episode. I'm wondering if you have a critique of what they've done so far, especially given the fact that just last month they were involved in another case of 2 Canadians who were eventually released.
I would say the Australians have been really, really proactive. The Canadians have come to the party. They have been to see Fahmy in prison. They were the ones who actually managed to get him to see a doctor. He had a dislocated shoulder when he went in. And I believe that they have seen him again subsequently. His parents have come over from Montreal. The whole family is now back in Egypt. And we are making inroads with them, with the Canadians now.
Is there any concern over?
Yep.
Is there any concern over the fact that he's being referred to as an Egyptian king? There's a hyphen there. There was. Is that a topic of concern for you? You noticed that that's not the case with Peter.
You know, that's an issue for the Canadians, I think. Yes, he is, but you know, I'm a Brit-American South African. You know, I carry 3 passports, and we're journalists. And we all know that another passport is a very, very valuable thing to have at the end of the day. I honestly don't know enough about the issue in Canada about dual citizens. I'm not hedging, I just don't know enough about how it's perceived in Canada, dual citizenship.
Reaction to them obviously creates a lot of issues. But
Yeah.
at the same time, there's a sense that he's not being fought for the way that John Grayson was fought last month.
Yes,
You agree?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Just a question at the back here.
From Jazeera. The question to Heather on Safaro. You talked about campaigning going to Egypt and everything else. Have you tried to approach Western government to do something about it? Britain, for instance.
I believe that there have been very diligent efforts made across the world to all manner of governments. Yes, in a off the record, behind the scenes way.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, back from the Telegraph again.
Yeah, hello, Colin from the Telegraph again. You mentioned just earlier something about different periods of remand, a 45-day period, a 2-year period. That sort of, could you just talk us through that in a little more detail?